In 1976, Tammy went back out on the road without George Jones for the first time in years.
We're on the bus, and Tammy said, "What if nobody comes?" We all fell out laughing because she thought they were coming to see George Jones. She was so scared every night. What if nobody shows up? What if they want Jones to be here?
They kept screaming, "Where's George?" And James Holly,
He was the bass player,
and he went up to the microphone and said, "We don't know where George is, and he doesn't
and
either."
he doesn't either.
After the divorce, certain of George's fans wanted to vent their anger at Tammy, and she was, in some cases, ridiculed.
She was pretty gutsy.
She was real gutsy. If we could have just excluded men from her life, she'd still be alive and be the biggest star in the world.
After Tammy left George, George was a mess. We'd hunt, we'd camp out. He just liked to do things. He threw out in the river one day and caught a little bitty brim. And he said, "Oh, Peanut," said, "the fish are out in the middle of the river."
That was not a brim he caught. He caught a catfish about this long.
Anyway, when he'd go fishing, it wound up costing him a fortune. Said, "We gotta go get a boat." So they took off to the sporting goods place and bought a boat. And then he realized he had to have something to pull it with, so he went down to the Chevrolet place and bought a new truck. He sent me to the grocery store to get folding chairs and cooking pots and pans and food. And so we got the truck and the boat all together and pulled it down to the river. He'd dig a hole and he'd put corn, wrap it up in tinfoil, bury it in the ground and build a fire in there on coals and roast that corn. I don't know where he learned to do all this stuff.
Indians.
With the exception of the expense, these nature sojourns worked out pretty well, until Peanut found God and decided to get sober. George went the other way. By then, he'd begun playing music again, with his only connection to Tammy, the Jones Boys.
George would jerk out a bag of cocaine there, and then he would just get completely stoned totally.
This newfound high apparently caused some kind of psychotic break in George, which led to multiple personalities. Well, two personalities, the duck and the old man.
The duck came first.
Yeah.
And the old man came later so he'd have somebody to talk to.
He'd sit up all night long, sitting in there in the bed, and he would be talking in the Donald Duck voice.
When he'd get in a car and he was drinking, he would talk like Donald Duck. Then he'd talk like the old man.
I don't believe it. It ain't natural.
And then they'd get in a fight, and then he'd get it between them.
The good Lord meant for us to wait, we'd be born knowing how.
And he wouldn't be paying no attention where he was going. You know, George had a lot of wrecks.
One day we were on the bus and going down the road and with the band, and he decided he wanted to get rid of the duck, so he kicked him off the bus. And he went on down the road a while, and he got to worrying about it. He done kicked the duck off the bus, and it was his best friend. So he made the driver turn around and go back and pick up the duck, put him back on the bus.
That's when we convinced ourselves, boys, we got to do something with him. And, you know, we can't go on with you being so distraught over Tammy, and you can't even perform. And we convinced him that he should sign up with Tammy just so he could be back somewhere in association with her.
With one tiny little stone.
You know, the beautiful thing is that in spite of all this crazy, crazy stuff, they managed to keep it together as artists. And you listen to that song, you get the whole picture of everything they're about in one record. There's nothing like it.